I'll present two more case studies. The first one is of land tenure reform in China. By the late 1970s, agricultural production in China was in dire straits, with widespread food insecurity and episodes of famine occurring in some parts. In the province of Anhui, local administrators began experimenting with a return to household farming from the collective farming system that had prevailed over the last 30 years. Within 5 years, this local experiment became a major policy reform that effectively reintroduced household farming and returned more than 95% of China's farmlands to 160 million households, and gave farmers the incentive to sell surplus farm production to the market. The impact: a rapid increase in grain production and rural incomes and a rapid reduction in rural poverty. This transformation of China's food and agricultural system has reduced hunger on a scale unrivaled in history. The last success story I'll share with you is that of homestead food production in Bangladesh. Recognizing that many Bangladeshis were suffering from the consequences of micronutrient deficiencies, for instance, night blindness among women and children, Helen Keller International, in partnership with about 70 local organizations and the government of Bangladesh, began promoting homestead production of micronutrient-rich foods, such as leafy vegetables, fruits, small livestock, and so forth, and combined that with nutrition education. This intervention tripled vegetable production and increased the food security of some 5 million people. And it did that in a way that directly reached those who were in the best position to sustainably improve household nutrition by empowering women. Why did these successes work? What were some of the key factors that helped to bring about or to catalyze or sustain these successes? Let me share with you 4 of them. First, science and technology. The critical role of long-term investment in science and technology is a key feature across most of these success stories. We see it across the developing world. We see it across major staples such as rice, wheat, maize, cassava. And we see it across lesser-known crops such as millet and sorghum and mung bean, and across to livestock and fisheries. It has been difficult to sustain long-term investment in agricultural research. Policymakers get a little nervous by the long lead times required for generating new technologies or new techniques, and by the need to stay ahead of emerging challenges. Yet we cannot overemphasize that across these successes, the critical role of long-term investing in agricultural research, science, technology prevailed. Second factor, or second driver, complementary investments. The long-term investments in the building blocks of agricultural development were another necessary condition for success that we saw emerging across many of these successes. This was evident in the story of the Green Revolution with the building and improvement of irrigation systems. It was evident in the zero-tillage case in Argentina with the provision of extension and education services to farmers. Conversely, the absence of sustained investments in these complementary investments, such as infrastructure, in several Eastern and Southern Africa countries actually stalled the gains that had been made by the introduction of improved maize in Kenya, Malawi, Zimbabwe, and Zambia. So to improve the chances that science and technology will make a real contribution to improving food security, sustained and significant public investments in rural roads, education, infrastructure, and the like are necessary. Third driver, private incentives. Even with the sustained investments in science and technology and in these complementary factors I mentioned a moment ago, little can be achieved without the right incentives. China demonstrated this with the return to household farming, where a change in incentives encouraged farmers to invest in their land and grow more food and engage in the market. Kenya demonstrated this by loosening of state control over fertilizer and maize markets, thus dramatically reducing the costs for smallholders to purchase inputs. By putting policies in place that encourage farmers and entrepreneurs to invest in agriculture, and by ensuring that markets provide timely and accurate price signals to these private sector actors, the likelihood of success in agricultural development increases. The last driver I'll mention is cooperation and collaboration. Partnerships among diverse actors in the agricultural sector, such as research institutes, community-based organizations, international agencies, government agencies, are evident in a number of successes. Examples of successful partnerships include the scientific collaborations that underpinned the international collaboration to contain wheat rust and developing improved tilapia. The grassroots level partnerships are evident in the case of Nepal with improving forestry management. The global and regional cooperation that helped eradicate rinderpest is another example, and the public-private partnerships that brought improved sorghum and millet to farmers in India's arid lands is another example. What can we learn from these successes? We gleaned 4 lessons. First, success is not unambiguous. And by that we mean that many successes were often accompanied by some type of a trade-off. Increases in agricultural production may have serious environmental consequences, as was noted with the Green Revolution, by heavy use, overuse, or misuse of pesticides and fertilizer. Scarce public resources allocated to an agricultural sector may divert those resources from other uses. For example, the Burkina Faso cotton success is criticized by some for its significant public resources needed to sustain the reform program. In Nepal, the difficulties in extending the benefits of community forestry to underrepresented groups in society is also noted. Many successes are a mix of pro and con, and this means that success in agriculture requires careful consideration of the difficult trade-offs. But the repercussions of failing to invest in agriculture because we are caught in a gridlock or paralysis, should we not, what are the trade-offs? The repercussions of failing to invest in agricultural development are very clear. Persistence of hunger. The second lesson is that success is a process. By that we mean that successes are generated and sustained through experiential processes. This means discovering by doing, learning from mistakes, adapting to change. I've already mentioned probably the most famous example of experimentation, China's land tenure reform, but other examples include experimenting with traditional soil and water management techniques that led to regreening of parts of the Sahel. The importance of designing an intervention that allows for learning and adapting can increase the likelihood of success. Third, success is not a substitute for strategy. In other words, one scientific breakthrough or one policy correction does not make a strategy. We need to invest in the supportive policies and enabling investments that allow for a comprehensive approach to raising agricultural productivity, increasing incomes, reducing poverty, all of which will allow successes to emerge and accumulate. And finally, for successes in agricultural development to be recognized as such, they need to be supported by strong evidence. This project brought home to us the importance of investing in the tools to systematically document, to systematically examine, and to share successes so that others can learn lessons from them, adapt them to their context, and scale them up. An overarching lesson to take away from this work is that investments in agricultural development can pay off and can successfully reduce hunger. Looking to the future, more successes are needed. Hunger remains persistent. As we mentioned earlier, 1 billion people still go hungry. New stresses are being added to the global food and agricultural systems with climate change, increased market volatility, and demographic changes. And the need to invest in agriculture is more important and urgent than ever before. Keeping food security in agriculture high on the global agenda requires catalyzing the desire to invest in agriculture, and it requires empowering those who are willing to take the risk of investing in agriculture. To this end, it is vital to share successes in agricultural development very widely as possible, to reach as many traditional and new actors as possible, and to communicate in as many modalities as possible. The work that David and I presented is not just the work of ours. It is the work of a very large team of people, inside and outside IFPRI, the many authors, the many researchers, the reviewers, the foundations of work we've built on and the shoulders of many others who've come before us. And then, of course, those who are helping to communicate this inside and outside IFPRI. So I do want you to walk away realizing that all of us who have contributed to this millions-fed work, all of us hope that it will inspire people at all levels to rethink agriculture and to invest in agriculture. Let me conclude by showing you a 1-minute video that we hope will also inspire others and share this message further.
Imagine a world without hunger, without poverty. It can be done. In a world of many different challenges, each in its own time and place. With countless groups of people, all bound by food insecurity, comes a diverse collection of success stories of triumph over hunger and poverty. An array of success stories from all over the world, gathered and scientifically assessed. The impacts are millions fed, globally, regionally, and nationally. Farmers, scientists, civil society groups and politicians discovering solutions to agricultural challenges through science and technology, leadership, communities taking a stand, and collaboration. Join us in learning about these stories, which are only the beginning, a seed of hope in turning the impossible into the possible.